Hi guys, welcome to the channel talking all things Zelda. Today, with absolutely no Tears of the Kingdom spoilers, I want to take you through my favourite 7 bosses from 3D Zelda games, with reasons as to why these particular encounters have lived with me throughout the years. Legend of Zelda bosses create some of the best moments in the series and manage to impress upon the player that defeating each one really matters to the longevity of each of the respective game's kingdoms, perfectly encapsulating that feeling that Link is really up against it and that not succeeding would have dire consequences for the world and its citizens. Not only that, but they are often epically cinematic and provide pivotal moments within the overarching story plots. Their importance on the ultimate impact of each game on the player in the sense of the lasting impression that game leaves cannot be overstated. Boss battles are so integral to the series that they are now one of the key factors in deciding just how much I enjoyed that particular entry. So, just a few caveats to the list before we start. Firstly, I will revisit this list following the release of the inevitable Tears of the Kingdom DLC, and for that reason I won't be including Tears of the Kingdom content in today's list. Secondly, this list will comprise of only main bosses, of temples or dungeons or Link's overarching main nemesis from a particular game. It will not include any sub-bosses, which I will save for another day because there have been some particularly epic encounters on that front. Finally, narrowing this down to just 7 bosses was an incredibly difficult task and is not based on difficulty, rather their impact on the player and how I view their significance when comparing the series as a whole. So please bear in mind that this is just my take on it, and I fully appreciate you may have differing opinions, which I would love to hear about, so let me have it in the comments below. So kicking straight into this at number 7, everyone loves the recurring style enemies in the Legend of Zelda series, often creating some memorable moments, but never have we fought a style enemy quite as colossal or as powerful as Stalord. Following one of the finest dungeons the series has ever produced, the Stalnoxes in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom don't even come close to this gargantuan. If you ask any Zelda fan what their biggest criticism of Twilight Princess was, it was that weapons were generally confined to the dungeon they were found within and were not utilised throughout the remainder of the game, and Twilight Princess had some really cool weapons like the ball and chain and the spinner, and the battle with Stalord was the spinner in all its glory, evading the undead army in the giant sand bowl to get in close and chip away at his spine, with the undead often putting up a fairly solid defence of their fossil overlord, coupled with the aggressive anti-spinners circling the bowl. And then, just as you think the fight is over and the sand drains away from the room, we transition into a staggering new phase, using the spinner to build an impressive new arena, gigantic in scale, and the returning music from the Valvagia fight in Ocarina of Time hits you hard with a beautiful blast of nostalgia, jumping wall to wall to avoid the infernal flame balls hell-bent on destroying Link. Not only was this a truly unique battle not seen before in the series, but there's a real tension to this fight. Completely awesome. Before I discuss number 6, my disclaimer here is that Breath of the Wild is one of my favourite Zelda games, but as far as its bosses go, the base game ranks right at the bottom of the list. They were unimaginative and quite frankly downright bad. There was no connection with any of them, no interplay, no real emphasis on what was at stake, with Ganon being especially guilty of this. But then, thank goodness for the DLC. It's almost as though the developers realised what they had done and what was missing from the initial experience, because the Champions Ballad was fantastic and Monk Mazkoshia was an absolutely epic boss fight, the true final boss of the game. The build-up was great as well, where he essentially says you've defeated everything this world can throw at you, but can you defeat me? And the up-tempo, almost jazzy music starts to play as you teleport to the battle arena. I was like, damn biatch, bring it on. And he was tough alright. Trying to figure out the sequences the first time around was a challenge, not always being immediately obvious. By far the toughest boss fight in Breath of the Wild. And it wasn't just the challenge, the arena is outstanding. What a setting. High in the skies above Hyrule, maybe a nod towards what was to come, who knows. This is an arena fitting of a final boss, not what we got with Ganon. And Dark Beast Ganon was hardly a fight. But in Monk Mazkoshia, it finally felt like we'd been given a boss worthy of Breath of the Wild's overall calibre. Number 5 then, and I very nearly went with Phantom Ganon, which is the fight that concludes potentially the best dungeon of all time, the Forest Temple. But Bongo Bongo is an excellent end to an incredibly creepy dungeon, and there's an added bit of spice to this one. The bosses in Ocarina of Time are outstanding across the board. That game was so far ahead of its time. While the fight itself is not particularly difficult, it's the build-up, the big reveal. You feel like you are fighting something truly horrific here. You've seen the devastation it's wrought throughout the Shadow Temple, Kakariko Village, and potentially the Village Well all those years ago. Some of the rooms found within the Shadow Temple in particular suggest some fairly grisly things have taken place. And let's not forget, Link has already lost to Bongo Bongo once before, in Kakariko Village, when it first escapes from the well and flings Sheik around like a ragdoll. The fact that Bongo Bongo is invisible to the naked eye as well makes this fight even more intriguing. What has been terrorising Kakariko Village and the graveyard? It's one hell of a build-up. The player is fully invested in this plot thread, and that moment when Link drops down onto the drum and there's still nothing to be seen as Link bounces to a pause, this is it. Where is this boss? And then bam, a hand appears to strike the drum, and then again, is it toying with you? It's almost as though this is some terrifying war dance from beyond the grave, designed with the sole intention of striking fear into its opponent. And then there it is, the Phantom Shadow Beast, an absolute abomination. What ensues is a satisfying fight, and then when Link strikes that final blow and Bongo Bongo's drum beat fades to a halt, a real feeling that you have made a difference and saved a lot of people from a terrible fate. Number 4 up next, and this guy just had to be on the list. The Legend of Zelda series' ultimate big bad, the underlying evil that endures and reincarnates in various forms through the ages, Demise. And thankfully, this was his final form in Skyward Sword, because the imprisoned was just a stupid scaly slug with teeth and weird toes. An awful enemy, one of the worst the series has ever had. But back to Demise, and there was a huge build up to his reincarnation, as he is only ever referred to throughout the game, a mysterious and powerful evil we know little about. We don't get to see him in this destructive form until the game's climax. And sword combat fights are just so epic in Zelda games, they feel more personal. You can feel Demise's hatred towards not just Link, but humankind generally. I loved the ethereal arena here, and the fact that Demise tells Link to take a look around as this will be his final resting place. A powerful line. There's almost an arrogance and swagger to Demise, but he respects Link's courage to stand up to him, instantly creating a relationship between the two. Then the lightning strikes are perfect additional touches to the final battle, creating that sense of scale and of epic proportion. proportions. There's a lot at stake here, and even when you beat him, he delivers his haunting final lines, that an incarnation of his hatred shall ever follow Link's kind, so they'll always wander a blood-soaked sea of darkness. Chilling stuff. At number 3, the climax of possibly the most eerily atmospheric and darkest Zelda game of all time, and this almost claimed the second spot in my list. It's a unique fight, in the sense that it can be made incredibly easy should you choose to invest your time in completing the most glorious side quests the series has ever known, your reward being the Fierce Deity Mask that allows you to destroy Majora within 30 seconds. But I'd be willing to bet on the average player's first playthrough of this game, they reach the final boss with some of the masks missing, and therefore have to fight the 3 phases of Majora as normal Link. I thoroughly recommend this, even if you do get the Fierce Deity Mask, because the whole sequence is an enjoyable challenge. I enjoyed each phase, as they, in turn, seem to build towards the game's crescendo, which it unreservedly delivers on, with the music ramping up considerably in each segment. Majora's Wrath in particular is a daunting final phase, and an enemy that can damage Link easily from distance, with its huge whip-like arms. And then all this culminates in possibly the best credits scene in the series. Beautiful, stunning, perfect. You can see the tangible difference you have made to this world, and you really feel like the hero. The moon was literally about to crash into Termina, causing an apocalypse-level event, destroying everything in its path. There's so much emotion in this fight as well, knowing how the mask corrupted the Skull Kid and forced him to perform atrocities in its name. The Skull Kid, who, throughout the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask duology, has had a heartbreakingly tough time of things. Majora is pure evil and must be stopped at all costs. A truly satisfying finale to the game. To be honest, the penultimate entry on the list challenges the top spot, but it's facing exceptionally tough competition, which I'll get onto shortly. Before you face Ganondorf in the Wind Waker, there's a polished build-up, where you actually sympathise with him, and it's the first time I could understand his reasoning. He speaks of the devastation his homeland faced while the rest of Hyrule flourished, the destruction the wind brought, and that his motivation was not fueled by a thirst for destruction, but instead the foundations his desires were built upon were rooted in wanting a better way of life for his people. This is probably the most well-rounded version, and dare I say mature version of Ganondorf we have ever encountered. There's an incredible juxtaposition presented by this fight, a tragedy to the whole affair. On one hand, you are saving this new world, but with the other, Hyrule, a kingdom we have long fought to preserve, is being washed away. And the cascading water provides possibly the most epic arena the series has ever created. The whole kingdom is about to be lost to the depths of the ocean, once and for all, crushed below the waves, and amongst it all, it's a frantic final showdown between the 3 Triforce wielders. The music in this fight is second only to the top spot in my list. It's a spine-tingling blockbuster of a fight, the perfect conclusion to one of the best games ever made. I still think the combat in the Wind Waker is up there with the best the series has offered, with the incredibly fluid motions the cel-shaded graphics allowed. The fluidity of Ganondorf's movements are wondrous to behold, and all this culminates in one of the coolest moves Link has ever pulled off. Rolling around the back of his nemesis before launching into the air and thrusting the Master Sword straight through Ganondorf's head. I'll never forget that. What an end to proceedings. And here it is, the top spot. And I would be surprised if a boss fight ever beats this. This fight is gaming perfection, utterly outstanding, and the most epic a video game has ever been. Ganondorf and Ganon, a phenomenal sequence. And we have to break this apart bit by bit because there are so many great moments. Starting with Link's ascent up Ganon's castle and the organ music building as you climb the final staircase, with the light penetrating the stained glass windows getting brighter and brighter as you reach further towards the top, before opening the awesome final boss door. Side note, I hope they bring boss doors and keys back to the series in the next game. And then there's some great interplay between the three Triforce wielders, as it turns out Ganondorf himself is the one playing the organ, almost arrogantly waiting for Link to arrive. We then break into the stunning cathedral-like arena, again with the stained glass windows. You can feel Ganondorf's power emanating from him, especially when he draws in power to unleash his cloud of dark energy missiles. The music is equally well suited to this moment and adds palpable tension to the battle. Once you finally overcome the Great King of Evil, he's not done there and tries to bring down the castle to crush Zelda and Link beneath, placing a stress on the player to escape in time, while having to deal with enemies on the way back down the tower. I really enjoyed this added layer, knowing that the game was not quite done with us yet. And following a successful escape, I had no inclination of what was about to unfold. I thought the credits were about to roll, but then that sound, what was that? And the way that Link instantly throws himself in front of Zelda, our hero yet again putting himself on the line. Something huge is coming. Walking nervously up to the ruins of the castle, and then bam! Fire rises suddenly around this new arena, and Ganondorf bursts from the ruins, still alive, and he looks desperate, a maddening look in his eyes. There's no need for words here. This transformation into Ganon is the moment in the Zelda series that hit me hardest and will always stay with me. Lightning crashes down, splitting the air in the background as ominous music plays, before shifting into the epic undertone that will pervade this fight. No subtitle here, just Ganon. Link versus Ganon, and then the Master Sword gets smashed out of Link's hand, out of reach. But there's no panic from Link, just ice cold focus as Ganon brandishes his swords and Link stares up at him. The most epic gaming shot of all time. This is it, the final showdown. The whole world is relying on you, on Link, and every time Link is struck, Zelda cries out in anguish. You can feel the real sense of danger here. Ganondorf has now transitioned into pure evil, reason completely gone. Link must do everything he can to end this reign of terror, and after doing enough damage, Link gets his chance to take up the Master Sword again before weakening Ganon enough to deliver the epic final blow, banishing Ganondorf to the void of the evil realm, where he would lie in wait for his chance to return. This whole sequence will be forever ingrained in my mind. Perfection. Wrapping up then, I would love to hear if you agree with this list of beyond epic boss fights, some of the most important moments in the Legend of Zelda series. So let me hear your take on it in the comments below. And if you share my passion for all things Legend of Zelda, please help me out and hit that subscribe button. I've got lots of great stuff planned, including many more retrospective dives into various aspects of the rich history of this series. Thanks, have a good one, and catch you next time.